Okay, so I've got my metal texture in place. I think what I'm going to do is come up here to Edit, down here to Transform, and I'm going to flip it vertically. That will place some of that color down here in the bottom region, so there seems to give a little more even distribution to the colors. What I'm finding though is with this metal texture, it has a lot of bumps already in it when you look at it with the normal blending mode on. On overlay, some of those bumps are still coming in, and I'm really not that happy with the way it looks. So I'm going to click on the Lock Transparent Pixels, come up here to Filter, Blur, and I'm going to give a little bit of Gaussian blur to that. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. And I just want to apply a little bit of blur to that so that some of those bumps, some of that texture is washed out a little bit. But I'm still retaining all that color information, which is what I want. Okay, let me zoom out. Alright, that looks good. Into Adobe Bridge one more time. And let's find another metal texture. Now, chances are you won't have any of the exact same ones that I've got, but that's not a big deal. Good rusty metal textures will work. They probably don't even need to be rusty, just some good old down-to-earth, wholesome textures that will, and I like this one, that will provide some decent color information in your work. Put this in place, stretch it out. Okay. Change this to overlay. Alright, that is looking good. It's a little bit too red, so what I'm going to do is come up here to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to come down here to Desaturate, or Saturate, and I'm going to bring the saturation of this down a bit. I don't necessarily need all that red in there. Let's enable the next one. And let's reduce the saturation of this one as well. I don't want it to look like a rusty roof. I want it to look like a roof that is made and has lots of minerals in it. And let's bring the saturation of this layer. See, that's all the way up, down. I'll bring it down a little bit. Alright, let's zoom in and look at our work. Now that last texture, that last metal image that we brought in there, looks like it's bringing in it a lot of bump. So I'm going to lock the transparency of it, come up here to blur, and add a little Gaussian blur to that. Again, all I want is the color information. That's about all. Okay, now that looks like a nice, hardy, mineralized sandstone. I'm going to come down here to my last layer. Let me close that. I'm going to come down here to this first layer that we created. I'm going to come up here to Filter, Noise, and I'm going to add a little bit of noise to that. Not quite that much. And I want it on Gaussian and monochromatic. I don't need to add any color information. Certainly not the multicolored speckled color information that it's going to bring, that this filter will bring with it. And a little bit more, a little bit less. Okay, I like that. Okay, I got all my layers completed. I'm just going to bring them down and group them. And I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. I'm going to save my work at this time. And okay, for the next effect, we need to add the horizontal and the vertical lines in here to make it look like they are individual roof tiles. Now when I'm looking at these roof images, the horizontal lines are far thicker than the vertical ones, and that makes sense because the light source is above this object or these slate tiles, and they're going to be casting a longer shadow than the shaded area in between the tiles. So I want my horizontal lines to be thicker than my vertical ones. So on this new layer, I'm going to disable the other one so that it's easier to see. What I want to do is I want to create a brush that will give me a chipped, fractured look, because that's how the slate tiles look on their edges. So in my paintbrush, in my all my brushes here, I don't have any that have that fractured look. So I'm just going to create my own very quickly. I'm going to come over here to my pen tool, select pen tool, and I want to create a shape. So I want to click on this little icon right here and click on that one and auto add and delete, and I want to add so that this one, and I'm just going to use black. That's fine. What I want to do is just create a I guess you would call it a fractured shape, because this is going to be the shape of my pen, my brush. And that's fine. I'm going to come over here now into this blue area. I'm going to right click, and in its current state we can't use this as a paintbrush. We need to rasterize it, which by rasterizing it, it turns it into a JPEG image. So now we have a nice, very sharply angled, irregular shape that was going to be our paintbrush. So we want to save this as a paintbrush, so I'm going to hold down Control button. I'm going to click right inside here. Now it creates a selection of that. Now I can come up here to Edit, come down here to Define Brush Preset, and you can type in whatever name you want. I'm just going to leave it at the default and click OK. Control D to deselect that. I'm going to get rid of that paintbrush now. On a new layer, choose my paintbrush and open up my paintbrush palette, and the last brush is the one that we just created, and which is right here, and that's that. Well, there's some things I need to change about it. I'm going to bring my spacing up to about 50. I want to enable shape dynamics and scattering. Now I'm using my Wacom pin for this, but nothing that I am doing with it is pressure sensitive, so you can use your mouse and achieve the exact same result. What I want is, I want the size jitter to be all the way up. I want the angle jitter to be all the way up as well. And roundness, well, these are my settings that I'm doing. And scatter, definitely want scattering, because look at the effect down here as I am increasing the scatter. Well, I don't want it like that. It'll be all over the page. I want it to be tightly controlled, so maybe about 50 or so. Let me give a little test stroke of this and see what it looks like. Nice fractured shape. See, now this fractured profile that we're doing will mimic the shadow being cast off of a fractured, irregularly shaped surface, which is what the slate tiles are. And this looks like a little too much. Let me bring that down. Okay, I'm happy with that. I've got the settings I want. Let's turn our layers back on. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to reduce my brush size. Now I can't see. There we are. And I want it thinner than that. Okay, I'm probably going to want to increase the scatter a little bit more because at this size I want it to be a little bit more scattered. Not quite that much. Depending upon the shape of the brush that you created, your results will vary. Okay, I like that. That looks like a nice scattered look. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. On my new layer, I'm just going to hold down my control key, which will allow me to draw a straight line all the way across. And that's what I want. I'm going to duplicate that layer. And I'm just going to move it down. Duplicate that layer. There we are. I just want to offset it. Okay, new layer above that. What I want to do now is draw those vertical lines that will be the spacing between the individual tiles. And I want them to be thinner, considerably thinner, than the horizontal lines. Now I could use a step and repeat process where I create one vertical line and then use a repeating process and space it all the way across, but I think I'm going to go for more of a rustic or provincial look, and so I'm just going to do these manually. That way the spacing in between will not be exact. So I'm just going to hold down, I'm going to press, hold down Control and draw a vertical line, move over, hold down, press, hold down, not Control, Shift, which will allow me to draw a nice straight line. Hold down Shift again, straight line, Shift again, straight line. I'm just going to continue doing this and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is my progress so far. I've got a bunch of these, and the spacing between them is not perfect, and that's exactly what I want. Now all I'm going to do is just start duplicating these and rearranging them, moving them a little, shuffling them over to the left or to the right so that they are offset from one another. So I just created a new copy of it, and I'll bring it down. And I think first I'm just going to come over here, Edit, Transform, and flip it horizontally and see what results that gives me. Let's move it over a little bit. There we are. So I'm just going to continue doing this and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got everything arranged on my page, and in arranging everything I've gone over the border of my work here, so I'll just crop all the excess off, and I have gone really below the UV portion of my UV map, so I can crop off a lot of the extra as well. It really doesn't matter, so I'll just create a rectangular selection around it, come up here to select, invert, and then hit delete, Control D to deselect that. Alright, well, let's turn everything back on. We're going to have to zoom in on this and see the effect that we're going to get. Alright, for this, the spacing in between these, we're going to be using the emboss filter again, and to get an idea on what it's going to look like, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to come up here to Filter, Stylize, and Emboss. And now we just need to play with the numbers here. Until we get something that looks good. think I'm going to go with 3 and 369. Hit OK. Let's change that to overlay. And this is the effect that it's given us. Well, it's not quite enough, so I'm going to duplicate that layer. And on this layer, I'm going to change its blending mode to dissolve. And I think this is the first time in my years of using Photoshop that I've actually found a use for this dissolve mode here. And well, in order to use it to our liking, we're going to have to do something with its dissolve. So I'm going to have to create a new layer above it. Now I'm just going to merge the dissolve layer with a new blank layer, merge them together. Now I can change that to overlay, and what that will do is it will add a little bit more of a broken, irregular shape in between here. So let me zoom out a little bit. This was without it, and this is with it. And in my opinion, it's a little bit too pixelated, so lock the transparency of it. Come up here to Filter and Blur, and let's add a little Gaussian blur to this, but I don't want to add so much that I lose the effect. That's 0. Okay. Now we can come back to normal and just play with our not layer style, blending modes until we find a blend that we like, and it'll probably be overlay or soft light. Well, that's darken. I think I'm going with overlay. Okay, let's zoom out and have a look at our work. I think I'm going to have to go with desaturating some of those metal textures a little bit more because there's just a little bit too much color in there. So let's start with that layer. I want more of the gray slate look. I think on this one I'm going to brighten it up a little bit. And I'm going to brighten this layer up a little bit more too. And I will brighten this last one up as well. Bring the opacity a little bit down a little bit. And on this one as well. There we are. We're getting a good blend now. Let's zoom in and look at our finished results. And I think we have created a very good slate looking material to go on our roof. And so this is the end of this tutorial. I certainly hope that you can benefit from this. Now, we may have created slate in this, but using these exact same procedures with just a little bit of modification, you can create brick walls, cinder blocks, any type of wall material that you would want just by using the filters and your blending modes right here in Photoshop. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching here at GeekatPlay Studios. My name's Gary Miller. Have a good day.